It's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Stan Askren.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Well, it's a real pleasure to be with you this afternoon. Who's got the volume? Because I'll start talking real loud here, and that's kind of overbearing. So if we could turn that down just a wee bit. I'm here for you. How many of you are here and you're getting credit? Okay, I'm sorry to hear that. We'll try to make it worthwhile for you. I really am anxious to respond to whatever questions you have and provide whatever information you have. I'm pretty comfortable talking about lots of different things, and so we can go wherever you'd like, from career to what do we look for in roles to strategy, whatever you'd like. I also would like to introduce one of my colleagues, Kurt Jaden. Kurt, raise your hand there. Kurt actually has a story and a career that's more interesting than mine. He is a Iowa State graduate. What year? He's younger than I am. 1985. He is an old man, though, isn't he? 1985, a degree in finance here. Kurt is just changing positions with H&I. He has been our chief financial officer. He now is senior vice president for H&I, and also he is the president of International. So he's running a significant P&L, profit and loss part of our business, primarily in China and India. And Kurt has a long background with lots of major corporations, Procter & Gamble, the old Gateway Computer, and Whirlpool. Lived how many years in Asia? 12 years in Asia, started their Vietnam office, and I think for one of those corporations, lived in Korea, China, Japan, etc. So if you have questions for Kurt, I'm glad to direct them to him as well. So I'm interested. Who has a question? What would you like to know? Yes, sir. How was I as a student in the undergrad? I was a very strong student. Average intelligence that worked my tail off and got good grades. So I'm going to use some of these questions to just sort of go on. And so one of the things that we should talk about as career is the importance of your undergrad education. It is important, but it is not definitive as to what you're going to do in your life and your career. Why is it important? It's as important to demonstrate your level of engagement, commitment, and your goal direction as it is anything. And so we look at academic performance, not so much that we give a rip that you've got a degree in some particular area, but we care whether you're goal directed or not. We care whether you've got the basic sort of intellectual capacity, intellectual know-how, but what we care even more is, are you able to set a goal and charge after it and go make it happen? And so undergraduate is important to us. We also that will find on occasion, there are some of you that have a really pretty dismal GPA maybe. We're interested because when you came to Iowa State, you maybe, and I'm sure you're not here, you maybe were less than mature, and you maybe were happy to be out of the house, and you maybe didn't have the personal sort of discipline to really buckle down and get good grades. So what we're interested in is, what's your progress been? So if you started here, where have you gone? Now, here's the other point. I'm representing large corporations. We employ 10,000 people, okay? And we're one of the largest in this state. Well, this country's economy is made up, and some of my professor academic friends here could probably correct me, but something like 55% of this country's employment is made up of firms that are like 50 people or less. And so you shouldn't just look at me and say, my whole aspiration is to become part of a large corporation. You should be thinking about, where can I go that fits? Where can I go that I can learn? Where can I go that I make an impact? Large corporations, we get the opportunity to be very selective. And so one of the things we use is a screen because it's just, you've got to start someplace to a large extent is, A, are you a college graduate? B, do you have academic performance that indicates you are goal-directed, you do have intellectual capacity? But that doesn't mean that that's the only way to do it. So I'm going to use these questions and make other points. I apologize if you say I didn't ask that. That's just how we do it. Yes, sir.
So it sounds like you had a pretty crazy ride coming up to where you are today. So I wanted to ask, what was your visions for the future like when you were an undergrad student and what sort of motivation drove you to where you are today?
That's a great question. I'm going to repeat these just for maybe the camera and maybe for you people back there. So the question was, is what was my thought, what was my vision when I was an undergrad as to where I might go with my career? Is that a fair paraphrase? Okay. Quite frankly, like many of you, I grew up in actually a different generation than many of you. I grew up in the generation where kids were to be seen and not heard. And I grew up in a great family, a loving father, but parents back then were not as engaged as they are now. And so my father was a professional, had an advanced degree. My mother was an at-home mom that had 6 children. I grew up with 2 sisters that were valedictorians and 3 brothers that were knuckleheads. Okay. They were really smart guys, but that's kind of how it went in the families. The girls were the smart one, and the boys were the not so smart guys. And so I always knew that I was going to be in a business sort of setting. I knew that I wasn't going to be an engineer. It had to do with my personal profile, my interest, etc. I thought maybe I would, consider being a doctor or something like that. I took organic chemistry in high school, and I figured that out. That wasn't for me. So as I went into university, and I knew I was going to go to school, to university, I didn't know what. I jumped and changed majors 4 or 5 times. I started off, I think as a political science major even, and then went to business and went around, and there wasn't great career guidance. And so my vision up until my senior year is that I was going to get an undergrad in business and go be a corporate lawyer. We had a family friend. The gentleman was a judge. He was a really honorable, distinguished man, and I thought I wanted to be something like that. So my vision was more about the persona and what I wanted to project rather than the work I was going to be doing. And nobody gave me any advice. And so the story goes, I did reasonably well the last 2 years of academic, and I was accepted to go to law school. Fell in love with a girl in high school, my one and only, that I ended up married. And I'm a guy that financed 100% of my education myself through scholarships, through jobs, etc. And my wife did the same thing, and we were just flat broke. And so I got an internship while I was a senior, and the internship was actually, I had a business background, and I thought I'd be a labor lawyer maybe as well, so I had a broad HR background, and I worked in the job placement office while I was on campus as a work study sort of deal. I taught resume writing, interviewing skills, job search. And when I was there, one of the recruiters said, hey, called me up, said, you know what, I got an internship for you. I said, I'm not looking for an internship. He said, I know, but you've got to do this. You're the type of individual that I think would fit well with us. What's it pay? Paid a lot more than I was making. And I was ahead on my credit hours, and so I accepted that job. It was in human resources. And during that process, they tried to recruit and hire me. Great company, just not big enough for me. I was looking for a company that had lots of opportunity. Part of that process, they made me a job offer. I went for an interview. They said, we want to send you to an industrial psychologist. And the industrial psychologist put me through a battery of tests and said, you know what? you've got the intellectual capacity to do this job. It was a management accounting job. They said, you can do this job, but it'll drive you nuts. And so when I was there, I said, actually, what I want to do is I want to go to law school. And this very smart guy said, you're crazy. You would not do well as a lawyer. Your attention span, your level of interest in broader things, you're going to be frustrated in a hurry. And Kurt's probably over here nodding. Kurt knows me well. So, and I'm not unique. So, by the way, I'm a very average guy that through lots of hard work, through the grace of God, or whatever you want to say, luck, have ended up in great opportunities. So, as I'm going through that, though, it's like, wow, what am I going to do? So I began a job search then on a broad level. Got married, stayed with this company for the summer, began a job search for business. And what I decided I was going to do is I'm going to go work for a large corporation, and they were going to pay for my MBA. And I was going to go into business. It's exactly how it worked out. And I got a job with a large corporation and ended up going to work for a fantastic mentor, a woman named Jean Plum, and I can name, by the way, every one of my mentors. And not all of them were flawless individuals, by the way. Not all of them were perfect. Jean gave me a bunch of responsibility. I then got some visibility on some high-profile projects. I then got selected for a development opportunity, rolled through HR, got my MBA at Washington University, and got selected to be assistant to the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing, which was a plum job because you were dealing with the CEO, you're dealing with the Senior Vice President of Business Development, setting strategy, and sitting in all the meetings. And that's when the light turned on. And I said, wow, you know what? I think I'd like to run a business. Not for my ego, not for the income, but because I liked the aspects of understanding, okay, where are we at? What customer are we serving? What unique capabilities do we bring? How do we set the strategy? How do we set the resources? How do we put the people in place? How do we put the structure in place? How do we put the processes in place so that we can make money? Making money is a lot of fun. Sometimes it's a lot of work and a lot of frustration. And that's when, though, when I had the chance to see that. And so then that began my career of where I went. So the vision was not clear to me when I started. But what I did do is I had some God-given capabilities. I am not by any means exceptional, okay? Most of you in this room have probably a whole lot more academic sort of credentials and awards than I do. But what I am is I got enough intelligence, the right level of intelligence, and I outworked anybody in the room, and I would engage. I would run to the job. I would run to the biggest challenge. I would run to the biggest mess there was. And I would engage with my mentors. And I began to ask them and engage with them and find out and learn good, the bad, and the ugly and apply that. And when you do that, opportunities arise. And so as I did that, the doors were opened and I got to do more. I used to work for a guy who'd say, Stan, you want more? Make yourself worth more. And if you remember anything about this, if you want more in your career and your life, make yourself worth more. And I'm not saying, by the way, because I think it'd be a mistake for you to sit there, you all should not necessarily want to be a CEO. You all should aspire to be outstanding human beings that are well-balanced, that are engaged in what's going on in this world, and think about how you impact lives. Some of you, the greatest impact in your life is going to be at your home, with your partner, and with your children, etc., or at your church, or with your Boy Scout, or at your synagogue, or your temple, or your community, or whatever. So don't think that I'm talking about just success is a big title, a big income, a fancy car, because a lot of that is just a waste. It's chasing the wind. But you should think about these lessons applying to sort of your success in life, is what I'd say. So I just want to be clear. I don't think you all should aspire to do what I do. I don't think you all should aspire to have a position like mine. I do think you should aspire to make an impact in this world. That was an intense answer to a pretty simple question, wasn't it? Sorry. I am a little intense. What questions do you have? Yes, ma'am. What was my greatest failure and what did I learn from it? Well, they're so numerous, I'm not sure I can call one out. But trust me, if you're not failing, you're not in the game. So the question is, and so I'm going to dodge the question, okay? Because honest to goodness, I have had no moral failures. I've had no integrity failures. I've had a lot of other failures. A lot of businesses that I've led or been involved with, a lot of decisions that I've made have been wrong. But the key is, and anybody, and this is what's interesting in this world, we are becoming less tolerant of failure. The governance, and part of this is a product of Enron and a product of the global economic crisis and failure and excess and really selfishness, et cetera. We now want to talk all about risk and we want to do all sorts of governance, et cetera, and we want to avoid failure. Well, as best I can tell, there still is a direct correlation between risk and reward. To get a big reward, you generally have to take a big risk. What you're spending your time in life is trying to figure out how to optimize that mix. But if you're not taking risks, you're not going to get the reward. And if you're taking risks, you're not going to hit every time. You know, you've heard that whole, if you hit 33% of the time, you made the Hall of Fame in baseball. Well, it's similar in business as well. And so I think as you think about risk in your life and risk in your career, so I'll pick up on the career thing. So one of the things I did is I took big risk in my career. I have a fantastic brother that's probably smarter than I am, but he's got a different risk-reward profile. And I was the one that took more risk in career and moved more and took on more risk in particular assignments and then got more reward. Now, Kurt will tell you that our culture is really to not avoid risk, but to learn from, avoid failure, but to learn from failure as well. And so we spend time, and I'm generally leaning forward, we spend time and say, okay, that didn't work out. What did we learn? Because in life, again, I sound like the old guy, don't I? Sorry about that. In life, everybody's going to fail. If you're trying, you're going to fail. The question is, what do you learn from that failure? And how do you avoid that as you go down the road? I don't know, can you think of failure there, Kurt? Okay, so Kurt and I, and part of this is Kurt and I work together, and if Kurt fails on something, unless it's a moral or integrity issue, if he fails on something, it's like, okay, great. What did we learn? Let's move on. And I think that's key sort of to your life and your career as well. Yes, sir. Foster a culture of innovation. Well, there's a big part of it right there, isn't it? And part of this is how do you foster a culture of innovation? First off, what is innovation? That's the key, okay? Because a lot of people think innovation, and I'm not saying you do, but a lot of times innovation is about some nifty, slick app, program, or whatever, or some new product. And so for me, innovation, the definition of innovation, again, I realize there's probably some academic professor here that wrote a whole thesis or dissertation on this, so I apologize if I butchered this, and you can talk to me afterwards. It's new and it's better, okay? That's innovation. And innovation often is providing, the same thing at a breakthrough cost or a breakthrough price. And so for us, innovation for the sake of innovation is kind of worthless. We get paid to serve customers, solve their problems better than their alternative, and to do it efficiently and effectively so that we can make money, which provides a return to our shareholders, provides a return to our members. All of our members own stock. And so innovation is really applied to solving a customer's problems or providing a solution to help solve customers' problems. And it's all about, are you in tune with what's going on? Are we nimble and agile? Are we moving? Are we adjusting? And are we asking people to do things that they otherwise would not do? And are we providing the resources and the climate and the stimulus to do that? And when they're not successful, how do we respond? Do we drag them out in the parking lot and beat them with a stick? Or do we say, good work, let's figure out what do we do with this? Because the other part, Kurt and I talk about this, I've taken risk and spent significant money, like millions and millions of dollars, and had it fall flat or not meet expectations. We've never had a failure, though, that we didn't ultimately come back around and say, that was the stock, that was the raw material that led to something else. And so if you don't foster it and you don't support it when it fails, everything's dead. The organization will say, take no risk. Now, this is always a challenge, isn't it? And often this whole issue in general, it has in part to do with the people you hire. So we're talking about risk. This whole risk reward thing is way understood. But in general, there's kind of a continuum between innovation and I'll call it execution. Sorry for my crummy writing. And if your premium is always on execution, 100% execution, flawless execution, which is, we tend at H&I to be, master the basics like no one else, flawless execution, you will not have anybody stick their neck out and try anything. And so one of the things, this is a big issue. Now, if you get paid for taking care of, basic customer needs and you're only semi-dependable, in other words, if you're down here all the time, you won't have any customers to innovate. So you have to find a balance. And it depends on what's going on in your business. It depends on what's going on in your industry. It depends on what's going on with customers, the climates that you are sliding from one side to the other. There are people that love structure. They love rows and columns. They love to execute all day long. And there are people who love to create, to dream, to scheme, to go start new things. You're probably in the entrepreneurship program. I don't know. And the rest of you are in the engineering program. And then there are people who are in the middle. And so you want to find the organization that kind of has a blend of that to really be successful. Does that make sense? What else? Yes, ma'am. Great question. What attracted me to H&I? The dean mentioned that I worked for two other large corporations, and they were great corporations, actually much larger than H&I. And I'm going to make a 100% confession to you. I'm going to be very transparent with you. I moved to Cedar Rapids, Iowa when I was a junior in high school. How many are from Cedar Rapids? How many of you went to Jefferson High School? Good man. I don't know you, but I like you a lot. Yeah, that's right. You did, didn't you? I'm sorry. So I moved to Iowa my junior year, and I met this young woman that is my wife. We've been together 40 years now. That shows you how old I am. And we got married, or we went to high school together, then we went to university together, undergraduate together. And then I got a job, and we drove across the state line. Said, we're done. We're never going back to Iowa. And we ended up living in St. Louis, Kansas City, Orlando, and I turned down a job to move to Paris, France, to move to Muscatine, Iowa. And part of that is I went, and it was kind of out of the blue that I got a call about this role. I started my career, I was the corporate vice president of human resources at H&I when I was 31 years old. And my career has been a mix of HR, operations, strategy, and marketing. And I'm kind of a blended guy. And so I wasn't even really doing HR at the time. My predecessor had a search underway looking for a business-oriented human resources person. There's something in this for you. And I was getting ready to move the family to Paris. I thought, what the heck? I'm getting ready to make a big change. Somebody once told me, you're getting ready to make a big change, look at all your options. So I met this guy, I'm thinking, I don't want to move to Muscatine, Iowa. Okay? And you know, what could this have? HR or something I'd done, but I wasn't really interested in. And as I was going, I was on the plane flying there. I was flying from, I don't know, Orlando or someplace. I wrote down, I still have the sheet of paper. I wrote down, I want to work for a company that's successful. What's success is they're growing and they're profitable. I had had experience in other businesses that were one or the other, and some that were both. And why growing and profitable? It's not necessarily where you want to go, but to me, there's a vitality about that. Second, I wanted to work in an organization that had cultures that aligned with mine. And the culture that aligns with mine is sort of this Midwest type of culture, to use shorthand. It's transparency, it's hard work, transparency, integrity, you know, and I had worked for a large French company, wonderful business, wonderful people, and it was all about sort of, you know, quite frankly, they were losing $600 million a year, and the senior officers were more concerned about flying around the helicopter and going to the chateau and their driver. They weren't about, you know, creating value for shareholders and for their employees. And I wanted to work for somebody that I respected, trusted, and liked. And so I ended up having this breakfast with this guy, and there's more there anyway. So I ended up having this breakfast with this guy, and in 15 minutes, respect, trust, and like. And he's a very sophisticated international business person. So, you know, I went home, and my wife is an at-home mom at that point in her life, and she's got these 3 little kids running around climbing the curtains and all that stuff, and she's only vaguely familiar with what I'm doing. She said, well, what'd you think? I said, I don't know. You know, I think I really like this company. I explained the guy and explained the job, and she said, well, that sounds interesting. Where is it? And I said, Muscatine, Iowa. And she said, you know what? I think I'd like that. Now, keep in mind, she was the one that when we left said, I'd be back. Well, what happens is we went and saw lots of other things. We found out that traveling the world, living around the world is interesting. Everybody should do it. But actually, these values and this home-based sort of thing, and where you think about raising a family, is just as important. And so I took a job. And by the way, in this interview, the CEO, the guy's name is Jack Michaels, a very successful guy, great friend of mine, probably the #1 mentor, says after about an hour, this is the way he talked, and he's significantly older than me. He says, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, you know, Jack, it's a very good question. Because let me say this. If you're looking for a corporate vice president of human resources for the next 20 years, keep looking. If you're looking for somebody that'll come in, roll up their sleeves, understand the business, make an impact, learn, grow, and develop, I'm your guy, because I don't know. I really didn't know. I said, someday, I think maybe I'd like a job like yours. He said, great. Here's the deal. You come here, you perform, you deliver, I'll keep moving you, I'll keep developing you until the point you can't deliver anymore, and then I'll help you do whatever you want to do. And he said, and who knows? Someday you may have my job someday. 10 years later, 12 years later, he called me. He said, you remember that first interview? I said, I do. He said, well, the board has picked you. He said, you've been true to your word, I've been true to my word, you're the new CEO. And so that's why I really picked it. It wasn't that office furniture that the sun sets on office furniture. It wasn't about living in San Diego or you know, I live on the East Coast, by the way, of Iowa. I live on the waterfront. It's the Mississippi River. So it wasn't about all of that glamour. It wasn't about my ego. It was about the work that I was doing. It was about the people I was doing it with. And it was about the values of the company that I was working for. That, ladies and gentlemen, would be my advice to you. Make sure you know what's true. Make sure you pick what's important. All the rest of this is like chasing the wind. And in the end, working for people and working with people that you respect, trust, and like in a place that you think stimulates you, and if you perform, you get additional opportunity, that's the best thing in the world. And again, it doesn't have to be a big corporation. It can be a small corporation. It doesn't have to be for profit. It could be a not-for-profit. So I'm not selling you on HNI. I'm selling you on think about what you do with your life. Very good question. Yes, sir.
So building off of that, how do you, managing 10,000 people, how do you foster the same values and culture that brought you to HNI?
So 10,000 people, how do you foster that all the way through? Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Sometimes we do it very well, and sometimes we don't do it very well. You know what the key is? I just have to do it right with him. And then I've got to do it right with Jeff Loringer, and I have to do it right with Gene Reynolds, and I have to do it right with Donna Mead. And I've just got to set the tone at the top. And so tone at the top is something that's really important. And then I've got to make sure that as they're building their organization, they're doing that. And then they have to make sure as they do it top. I can't reach 10,000 people. In fact, you know, we've got all sorts of great interns, and we have about somewhere between 80 to 100 interns every summer, and it seems like about half of them are for Iowa State, which we love, by the way. And so I can't do it all, but I can make sure that the people that I'm around, that I'm first off acting the right way and setting the tone. Second, that they're acting the right way and setting the tone, and that they're making sure that on it goes. That's the only way to do it. It's a little bit like a family. If it's rotten at the head, it's rotten everywhere. If it's sweet at the top, it should be sweet all the way through. Other questions? Yes, sir.
How does the experience that you have right now divide between you learning from your mentors and you learning from your own experience?
I didn't hear the first part.
So how does your experience that you hold right now as CEO divide into you learning from your mentors and you learning from your own experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. So based on where I'm at today, how much have I learned from mentors and how much have I learned from my own experience? Is that a fair paraphrase? Yeah, we have kind of a view. I have a personal view of this, and these are not exact numbers. 75% of what I know and what I am, other than the core, and we'll talk about selectable versus trainable, 75% is coming from my experiences. 20% is coming from my mentors. 5% is coming from formal training. So 75% is really the experiences that I've been put in, the assignments that I've been given, the problems I've been given to solve. 20% is from the people that I lean on for consulting, for perspective, for advice. And 5% is from my education and from my advanced training. And that, I think, and I'm sure we have somebody here that's teaching that class, I think that's pretty true and pretty consistent with what the research would say. That, my friends, is why where you go to work in your life or the experiences you have, I'm a big advocate. And Kurt, I described Kurt's experiences. Kurt, by the way, has come in and was my chief financial officer. He now is the president of International. I take you through my career at HNI. I started as corporate VP of HR. My boss, and I did that for 20 months. He then said, what do you want to do next? I became vice president of marketing for our hearth business, so non-office furniture. It was a little backwater business, quite frankly. And when I did it, by the way, my mother, who lives in Iowa, was worried that I'd somehow gotten in trouble because I no longer was reporting to the CEO. I was reporting to somebody who reported to the CEO. I said, no, Mom, it's okay. I picked this role. And I went from vice president of marketing then to executive vice president, had operations, had a bunch of stuff. I then became president of that group. I then became group vice president in one of the large office furniture companies. Again, you see this? So I'm jumping around. And I became the group vice president, and a royal mess, and I had the choice. I then became the president of one of the office furniture operating companies, and then was named CEO. So that's, and I went from business to business, function to function. I went sideways, I went down, I went up, I went sideways, I went down, I went up. Because for me, look, I'm 56 years old. And, I've been CEO for 13 years. So one of the things, by the way, I hate to admit it to you, this sounds condescending, I don't mean this. I've got people in my life that some of you even know that are your age. I have a son who right now is starting he's finished up, he graduates in May, graduated from TCU, he's going to work, he's a business major, he's going to work for Cessna Textron, and I've had some of these same conversations with him. And what I said is he called me up and said, Dad, they're offering me a couple of jobs. One of the jobs, he's a business major, is process engineer on the factory floor. One of the other job was very much a business. He said, what do you think? I said, take the process engineer job. He said, Dad, I don't know anything about process engineering. I said, I know. Why did they offer it to you? I said, well, what they said is, look, we think you've got influence and persuasion skills. We think you're a smart kid, and we think you know how to solve problems, and we want you to come help solve problems. We can always find the technical talent. And so what I said to him is, I said, you know what, Tyler? You go with your background, your capabilities, your education, and you learn how value is created on the production floor. Go get your MBA. You can always move someplace else, but you'll never regret going and getting that core experience on the production floor. And that's one of the things I would say to you is, many of us, I was this way, quite frankly. I was so anxious to progress that I didn't enjoy the view while I had it. I was so anxious to move up that I should have spent more time moving sideways. Now, I did okay, but I think now there's a couple of roles I would have liked to have spent more time at. And so my encouragement to you is, don't be in too big a hurry to get through life. Because you get to where some of us are, and you're just like, geez, now what? I should have enjoyed the ride when I went. And that's hard for you. Many of you are saying, yeah, I just want to get through this. I want to get to 5, and I want to get through this semester, and I want to get through this year, and I want to get on with my life. Well, you'll understand it someplace. Other question? Yes, sir. Yeah, morning routine of a CEO. I started working out, actually, and I can hardly walk right now. Okay, so for me, a morning routine is basically, I've always been an early riser. So this is another piece of advice for you. It's a little bit different these days. I'm not sure whether I'm just getting old or not, but I get to work early, okay? Kurt's an early guy as well. I get to work early and I stay late. For me, it's not work. I like what I'm doing. I've always been this way. So get to work early. I often will have a breakfast meeting with staff just to catch up what's going on, because I travel a lot. Kurt and I are just coming back for 8 days, 9 days, what was it, in China and India, so I'm a little jet lagged. But this morning I got in, I caught up, and then it's almost meetings nonstop, either with internal people or with board members. So I report to a board of directors. I'm chairman of the board, but that is really a title only. It's not my board. I work for them. And then I deal with customers, because customers are ultimately the ones that we have to serve. I deal with investors. And then I'm in addition to our board, I'm on 2 other boards. And so it's really that sort of thing. And it kind of depends on what the season is. There's a rhythm. Right now we're coming off the closing out 2016, setting our budgets and our plans for 2017. And then it's very intense. And now I kind of have a bit of more of an open period till the next board meeting. And so I fill that with customer visits, with visits to the shop floor, with product reviews, with financial reviews, strategy reviews, et cetera. Is that? And I get paid to lead. So, what does it take to lead? Well, I should understand the business, and I should understand what's going on in this economy. I should understand what's going on in our markets, and I should make sure that we're thinking through, are we in the right spot? Do we have the right priorities? Do we have the right people? Do we have the right structure? Do we have the right process? Are we achieving results? If we're, so then it's the monitor, follow up. So plan, do, check, adjust, plan, do, check, adjust. And that's a lot of what my day is. Yes, ma'am.
What's your purpose, cause, or belief that inspires you? What's your why?
Yeah. So this is a profound question. Why do you exist? I promise you, it's hard for you to understand this now, but you will wake up and you'll say, why do I exist? Why am I here? And you will have different views of this, depending on what your view of the world is, what your view of theology is, you'll say, why do I exist? Have a purpose. So for me, H&I is a really interesting story because creating value for shareholders alone is a hollow, empty pursuit. What was that movie? Remember that Rick Moranis movie, Feed Me? You remember that? Some of the Little Shop of Horrors. You ever seen that movie? It's an old one. Yeah, see, I lost you. Dang it. It's basically a plant, this plant that just keeps eating, and it just keeps deeper and deeper. And some of my professor friends who are my age know what I'm talking about. And it's a little bit like creating shareholder value alone is never ending because it always has to go up, and it's ruthless. Either you do it or you're out. Now, if you do that alone, it's empty. When you can do that, H&I, when we create value for our shareholders, we create value for our members because all of our members participate in profit sharing, own stock. Well, to create value for shareholders, I have to create value for customers. How do I create value for customers? By having members that engage with customers that create value for them. When they do that efficiently, it creates value for shareholders, which then goes back into their pocket because they're shareholders, and it's really a pretty cool thing. So for me, that's a big part of it. I've written my epitaph. If you have it in your life, you will. You should write down what will they say as they circle the hole in the ground as they're dropping it. What will they say about you? What will my colleagues say? What will my children say? What will my wife say? What will my friends say? And what I want them to say is he's a man of integrity. He finished strong. I want them to say he was engaged. He cared about this. He was passionate. And what I want them to say is I learned a lot from him, and he developed me. Because you know what? It's kind of Barbara Bush did this. Some of you don't even know who Barbara Bush is maybe. But Barbara Bush talked about it in the end of life. I'm not going to sit around and say, I wish we would have had another good quarter. Or I wish I would have made another deal. Or I wish I would have sold another project. I'm going to say I wish I would have made a bigger impact on people. I wish I would have spent more time with my kids. Now I'm a grandfather. I wish I would have spent more time with my grandfather. So that's a big part of it, is have a purpose. And the purpose is and if you're just running around trying to develop people and have a wonderful time, and you're not creating value, this country, this earth, this society, you'll have limited opportunity. So when you can create value for society by creating something they want and need and will pay for, and you can do it with people, and you can be rewarded, and that changes their lives, it's a big deal. So the other thing for me is live without regret. And regret is don't do anything that you're sorry you did. Okay? And I have regrets now and then. None. I haven't done anything really stupid. I haven't put the boat all the way on the beach. Okay? And the second thing is don't get to the end of your life and say, I wish I would have. Do it. Do it. Go do it. What are you afraid of? Fear of failure is probably the number one affliction, the debilitator, the holdback for many of you of really sort of achieving really what you want out of life. And by the way, this is the other thing. I don't expect, I'll go back and say it again, I don't expect that everybody wants to be a CEO. It's a trade-off. I make trade-off all the time. I have my whole life. Kurt has, and he's got some boys here someplace that probably can tell you about the trade-offs when their dad was gone because he was traveling or whatever. And so I'm not saying everybody should do that, but it's the same sort of thing. Whatever you do it to make a difference and do it with passion. And I could go on and on, but I think you got the point. Is this I feel privileged to get to be able to do what I do. I thank my family and I thank the good Lord. And I thank the corporation of directors for the opportunity to do this. But in the end, when they lower me into the ground, do you think he's going to be at my funeral? He won't, because he'll probably be traveling someplace around the world. Okay, it'll be my wife and my kids and my grandkids, etc. And that's the impact. I do want, though, too, when the word goes out, Stan kicked the bucket, I want Kurt to say, good man, good man, a man of character, a man of integrity, a man of capability. I learned a lot from him. Great role model for me. That's about as it gets as good as it does for me. That's a long answer to that. Sorry to be so deep for some of you. Kind of look at me like, geez. You got 10 more minutes. Hang in there with me. I'm going to come here. Is there a question up here? Yes, sir.
Okay, so where do you see you taking the company within the next 5 years?
Where do I see the company is easier? It's we're going for breakthrough profitable sales growth. Okay? And it's relative to the opportunity, et cetera. And it's long-term shareholder value creation. And so we tell the world we should be doubling our sustainable profit every 3 to 5 years. And that's the big objective. How you do that is a challenge in this economy because the economy is not growing that. So that means you who understand doubling, that means in 5 years, I got to be, rule of 72, what's the rule of 72 say? 5 years, I got to be growing at least 15% per year. In the economy, fourth quarter grew 1.9%. Our industry's not growing that fast. So I've got to be particularly good at understanding the markets and finding the opportunities to grow profitably. For me, I don't know. I kind of get up. I love what I'm doing. I don't tell people what I'm going to do next because then they start hoping. Okay, so I want to continue to make an impact. I want to continue to work with people that I like, trust, and respect. And lots of doors open and close, and so we'll just kind of evaluate from there. Other questions? I'm going to go all the way up here to this lady.
You mentioned your time in HR a couple of different times, and since it's career week for so many of our students here, what impresses you in an interview?
Here's what I look for. Now we're talking about leadership roles too, because I'm at this stage where they don't let me interview, a whole lot. I just get to interview my staff. So this is important. All right, we're looking for goal-directed people. People that wake up thinking about, I'm going to move the ball forward, I'm going to make a difference, I'm going to do something. And around the people you work with, et cetera, who's goal-directed and who's not. And it's not a judgment, by the way, okay? That's number one. Number two, we're looking for people with strong intellectual know-how. And this comes in different forms. So there are some people who are highly analytical, and there are some people who are highly conceptual, and there are some people who are somewhere in the middle. If you take, ideally, if you're highly analytic and you can do the conceptual thing, if we give you experience, you'll be a strategic thinker. And so we're looking for people who have that capacity. Now, I didn't say we're looking for people that have a degree in supply chain or a degree in computer engineering and mechanical engineering. I didn't say that. I said we're looking for people with strong intellectual know-how. Then if I can find those, the third thing is if I can find strong influence and persuasion skills. And you know what that is. And again, you know who that is. Sometimes influence and persuasion skills is what keeps somebody who's really goal-directed with strong intellectual capacity getting the rubber to the road. They just don't know how to work with people. They don't know how to make a point. They don't know how to relate to where you at and what are you doing and how do I make my point so that you'll come my way. Because leadership is taking the organization places that otherwise would not go and getting people to do things they otherwise would not do. Okay, and I'm sure you all have had leadership classes, and that's a simple version of that. Leadership can be for ill-gotten gain and for positive gain too. But so I'm talking about leadership. So influence and persuasion. The next one is an aspiration for leadership. I like being up front. I always have. I like, and I'm glad to follow, but I'm one of these guys that say, give me the dang ball. Tell me what game we're playing. Tell me how you're keeping score, and give me the ball. I was not a great athlete. How many of you heard Dr. Kim? Dr. Kim, I played football against Dr. Kim. I think I tackled him. Now, that's as good as it got between me and Dr. Kim, by the way, okay? He's a rocket star, a superstar, we were in the same conference. We were just talking about this. So this leadership aspiration, this desire to lead, and then strong personal character. When you take those attributes and you put those together, those are positive. So generally what I'm doing in an interview is saying, Kurt, give me an example of when you were faced with really difficult circumstances and what you did to overcome those. Tell me what you're the most proud of in your life. When did you run into an unpopular position that you needed to sell to the organization? How did you do that? So influence, persuasion, et cetera. And that's how we basically interview. So it's kind of the best predictor of future behavior or future results is past behavior and past results. And so we're kind of doing that that type of interview. HR is a great field. My job is about people. And I don't even, I don't even really think about it a lot these days. But basically, Curtis say, the way we talk about is priorities or strategy. You get the right people with the right strategy, it doesn't make any difference. You can just stay in bed. They'll put together a structure in the process and they'll drive it. And so we talk a lot about this. Yes, David. One more question. I think he's cutting me off, which thank God for you guys. Yes, sir.
Okay, so being CEO, how much do you know or should you know about each department? Like, obviously, that's what executives who run it, managers.
Yes, the question is, as CEO, how much should I know about each department, et cetera? It depends on what kind of person you are, what kind of leadership style. I am at the stage in my career where I'm pretty intuitive. I'm logical. You ever read Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow? It's the Daniel Kahneman sort of stuff. It's really pretty good. It's not one is good. Rational thought versus intuitive thought is not good or bad. It's actually when you can do both and you understand that at the same time. And so for me, I know a lot about the business. It helps me because of this experience. I've been through all the businesses. I've been through most all the functions. I have a sense. I can feel what's going on. And so it's hugely valuable for me. There are some leaders. So the question would be if I leave and go to another company and work in a non-industrial or non-manufacturing. I work in an insurance company. I run principal, financial. How well would I do? I think that'd be tough. I think it'd be a lot of very hard work. Now, you'd have to work hard at really spending time and studying the results. I think regardless, you have to wade in. I have to wade in and sort of be in the middle of it to understand, what's going on with the business. Who are the customers? How are we creating value? Are we serving them better than their options? How is the organization performing, et cetera. So I think it's nice to know what's going on. If you don't, you have to wade in, at least in the critical areas. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate you listening. See you soon.
What a wonderful afternoon. Thank you all for joining us. And Stan, thank you so much for coming over here between India and Florida. And we've got a little something for you to take with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Very nice. Thank you.